This is the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, and it's been around in China for quite a while now, and a lot of people globally picking up the Xiaomi 14 Ultra might never have experienced or even touched a Xiaomi phone before. So let me show you a couple of things that you might need to change to make that experience switching a little bit smoother, and show you what you get in the box. Unboxing any phone is never as exciting as it used to be, but Xiaomi have at least made this a little bit more interesting because you get a little bit more in this than you do in any other unboxing. And when I say a little bit more, you get a free case, which is really not too bad, and you get a 90-watt power brick where everyone else seems to have left power bricks out. The USB cable that you get is USB Type A to Type C, which is a bit of a strange move, but it does give you that 90-watt charging. And of course, you get the phone itself, and Xiaomi sent over the black version of this with that almost like faux leather on the back of it. And I can't say I'm a huge fan of the touch and the feel, but that case will come in handy, so I'll use that instead of having to get to grips with this fake leather. The big standout though on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is that camera. It is huge, and also it's quite rattly if you can hear it, but that would be like the telephoto lens that you have inside of this phone. And this is the reason why a lot of people might be switching over from a Samsung or a Google Pixel or potentially even an iPhone and getting into that Android world. But let me show you some settings that you need to change on your Xiaomi 14 Ultra to try and get the most out of it, because some settings just aren't turned on by default, and if you turn them on, it makes this phone just a little bit better. And the first thing we'll change is the app layout to change it to 5:6 instead of 4:6, because I'm always a fan of having a little bit more on the home screen and having less pages. So 5:6 for me works really well. I think it should be the default for most people. Next thing, if you go to more at the bottom and go over to your animation speed, it by default is just on balance, but you can change it to either relax for a bit slower animations or fast, but I just change it to fast, so the phone itself just seems a little bit quicker than it actually is. And one part of having any sort of Android phone which really irritates me on the home screen is the Google Discover, so I turn this off straight away, and you can do that again in the settings by just pinching that screen, going to the settings and turning off Google Discover. Nice and easy, and it means you just don't accidentally swipe onto that when using the phone. And the only other thing that I want to change is the control center. So if you swipe down in the top right, the control center looks fairly familiar, so if you've ever used an iOS device, you'll kind of look like you've used this before. And you can remove a load of the toggles that Xiaomi put in by default, so some of these just aren't that useful, so I get rid of a couple of these and add in my own from the bottom below, and then just move them around and have them in a really good position. This helps making that phone just a little bit easier, and that transition from a different device over to a Xiaomi feel a little bit more like what you've used before. Next is one that I change on any phone as soon as I can, and this is changing that screen resolution. So if you go into the settings and go to display, you'll get offered a choice of having full HD plus resolution, which saves a bit of battery, or you can have WQHD resolution, which I just think you need to go and do it, because you might as well. You have that incredible screen from Xiaomi, so why not use it to its full potential? So I just turn this on straight away. Next thing that I changed on my 14 Ultra was going into the lock screen settings and just changing a few gestures and options here to make using that lock screen a bit easier. So the first one would raise to wake. For some reason, this is just off by default, which I think is really weird, so I turn that on straight away. And then the double tap to wake or turn off the screen when that device is locked. And just tapping that means you can then turn on or off the display with a double tap, just making it a little bit easier to see any sort of notifications that might come through. And next is the actual always on display setting. So again, by default, the always on display is turned off on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, and now every single phone has it on. So Samsung has it on, Google has it on with the Pixels, and so does the iPhone as well. So just to make it feel a little bit more like what I've used before, that went straight on. And while in here, you can change the image as well. You can play around with the clock size, but as soon as you hit apply, you'll see that on that lock screen, the always on display is on, and it just looks so much better, like infinitely better than it does without it on. Next is notification style, and you can turn this either to the stock version of Android, or you can have HyperOS's version, which just makes those notification bubbles a little bit bigger and a little bit more rounded, but I've stuck with stock Android, which I think just looks a bit nicer. Tap sounds is another one that I don't know why this is on by default, but you've got to turn it off. If you just go into the search bar and just search the tap sounds, it'll bring you up to this screen, and just turn it off because it becomes really annoying, and it's more annoying for everybody around you when they can hear you tapping away on your phone. So get rid of tap sounds and you're doing everybody a favor. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra, when I set it up, also didn't have gestures enabled by default. So go into your settings, search gestures, turn on gestures, and then what you can do is you can actually either hide that full screen indicator at the bottom, which is that small little bar that shows you where to swipe, or you can have it on And if you have it on, there's then something else you can enable as well, which is one-handed mode. So if you search one-handed mode, you can only use the one-handed mode if that full screen indicator is enabled. So all you have to do is swipe down on the home screen indicator and it will just bring that display down, and it's really nice and easy. But as far as I know, there's no way to do one-handed mode without having that full screen indicator on. So just make sure you toggle it on. Battery protection is another one. So just make sure you go into this and have it set as optimized, because by default, mine wasn't optimized. So every time I plugged the phone in, it would always charge to 100% without using my learning habits. So having optimized just means it is ready and charged to full when you need it, rather than 100% all the time. And it's up to you. You can actually have it on to charge to only 80% ever, but I just don't really see why that would help unless you're going to be keeping this phone for like 10 years, which I don't think anyone will. A couple of quick ones now, and you can turn on back tap, so you can have a double tap and triple tap to do something different. You can also change the animation for the fingerprint unlock as well in settings, but for me, I've just got this off, which might seem a bit boring. And bizarrely, reverse wireless charging isn't turned on by default, so this is something you have to go into the settings for, search it, and turn it on yourself. And there's only one other setting that I changed on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, and this was its default apps, just so it would use Chrome and it would use Photos and it would use everything that I was used to, rather than the default built-in versions on the Xiaomi. So to get to this, just go into your settings, go down to apps, then select manage apps, then in the top right, select other settings, and then go to default apps. And here you can change everything that we just spoke about. So the browser, you can change it from Mi browser to Chrome. For the gallery, you can change it from the gallery app that is built in on the phone to Google Photos, which is something that I changed it to. And then even for music, you can change it to either YouTube Music or Spotify from that default music option that is built in to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And they're just a few settings that I went through and changed just to help me transition to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra from my Google Pixel 8 Pro and the Samsung phones and the iPhones that I've been using. It feels a little bit more natural now, and I kind of know where everything is. But let me know in the comments, what do you think of the Xiaomi 14 Ultra? And do you want to see a bigger, more in-depth review on this phone? Let me know in the comments below. If you do want to see one of those reviews, then why not subscribe to Android Authority before you head off as well? And if you do that, then I will see you later.